Hello there. Welcome everybody to another live Ask Me Anything session on CGconnect. And as you can see, I have by my side the man behind Viray, Mr.
Hello.
Vlado Koylazov. How are you, Mr. Vlado Koylazov?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Excited about this
Yes.
session? Cool. Cool. We have plenty of questions. We got your questions during the past 2 weeks, and we kind of did a mishmash of all the questions so we can make a proper interview here. But you feel free to ask questions on the chat. I can already see some familiar names. Theo from Chaos Campus is there, and he was wondering if it was going to be me and Vlado sitting in the same room. Yes, we have news for you. Yes, we are sitting in the same room. This is not AI, which is always a disclaimer that we have to.
No AI.
There's no AI involved. We see Amit as well. This is feeling such a cool, casual talk. That's the idea. That's the whole idea. So before we start, I'd like to talk to you guys about something. We have a new event. You know that on CGconnect, we do have a lot of cool events, live events, on demand, and all that sort of stuff. And we have a very cool one related to V-Ray, which is the V-Ray Deep Dive Series 2026. Registrations are open. You can come to the site on cgconnect.chaos.com. You go to the Learn section, and you can find it. It's really easy to find, and it's going to be amazing. You'll be talking to a lot of cool people. I won't go into many details. Just please go to the page. Let me paste the actual address here, the actual link in the chat, so you guys can go there. So don't forget to go to cgconnect.chaos.com to see more events like this, and especially the deep dive series that's coming up. It's next week, I think. Yeah, on June 24th. So stick around. Now, we do have a few questions already. I divided them properly, so I'd like to start talking about, of course, the new release of V-Ray. And I'm feeling so old because I started using V-Ray on Alpha 0.01, like 25 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and those are not like annual versions, right? So when it goes like, oh, it's V-Ray 7, it's been 25 years.
Yep.
Right. So, which is nice, I think. Like instead of releasing things every week or whatever, like only when they're meaningful. I think it makes perfect sense. And then we had the video. That was the first time you did a video for a release, right? Which is, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've never had, we've had release videos, obviously, but there was always somebody else doing them, and I don't normally feel very comfortable doing these things, but this time it was kind of okay, so maybe I'm now grown enough to actually do a release video. So it was super cool.
I genuinely, when you said in the video, like, this is the first time I did, I was like, what? I genuinely didn't know that.
First time, yes.
This is awesome, really. And then in that video, you mentioned that this latest update 3, bridges the gap, and I'm quoting, bridges the gap between real-time and final production rendering into a single unified workflow, especially with my favorite, and I've told you that before, like the integration with the Vantage viewport.
Yes.
I mean, like, I really cheered when I learned about that, because that's how, when I first saw Lavina, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I was like, dude, this would be so cool as part of like the viewport and stuff. And it finally happened. Now, the question around this is, how do you see the future of visualization artists? Like, we now have true real-time feedback. Like, we're actually looking at the rendered final image, basically. So like, do you think this, the traditional click, get a slip, go get some meal or whatever, the waiting time will eventually disappear?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, not for, so real time works for a lot of use cases, but there are still some remaining things that still require a little bit of time. So as much as I would love everything to be real time and interactive, it's probably at least some time in the future, I'm guessing. So with Vantage, you can do a lot of stuff, and it's usually very fast. But still, if you want to have more complicated shaders or some more complicated like volumetric stuff, it's not right now possible to do this in real time. Also, we have things like shading languages like OSL and GOSL and so on, which we don't support in Vantage right now, although in theory it can be implemented. Maybe it will at some point, but for the moment there are still a few things that you can only do with the regular V-Ray. So I would like to think that most of the workflow can be real time now, but there's a little bit still that will remain offline for now. So there will be still some waiting involved, unfortunately.
Yeah, but do you think the bottleneck, let's call it a bottleneck, is on the hardware side or the software side?
It's just the nature, like those things would be slow regardless of what hardware they run on. We've seen people do very complicated procedural shading networks that would be just way too expensive to run in real time. And they do these things to save setup time. So yes, you can probably do them in real time as well, but you have to spend time baking maps or whatever just to get to the real time solution. So sometimes it's just not worth it. And it's more important to save the artist time than the final render time. So not everything has to be real time.
Yeah, so it's kind of the type of investment that you want to make,
Yeah.
right? You have
Yeah.
an amount of time until you have your deadline or whatever. How do you want to spend that time?
Yeah, exactly. So also, I mean, hardware is getting faster, and maybe at some point we'll be able to do on a GPU everything that we can do with regular V-Ray, but we're not there yet. And obviously, with real time, we call it real time, but let's not forget that there's a lot of post processing, like denoising, going on. So it's not the same as getting a render out of V-Ray.
And there's also the fact that people often mistake the concept of real time as no rendering. And it's actually rendering something.
Yeah, it is rendering, even though it's very very fast.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And sometimes it takes like a few seconds or whatever, and sometimes take longer. And as you said, they don't make sense to be real time because they
Yeah,
will take long
yeah.
anyway. So you have to do stuff, and of course, like there's a bunch of calculations, and they get more expensive. We just saw that Nvidia announced their new line. I keep forgetting the name. It's RTX something. The new processors.
Yes, the RTX Spark. Is that
Yes,
the
Spark. Yeah,
yes?
and people were like, "Yeah, it's the end of waiting for everything." And it's like,
No,
is it?
it's not. It's not.
It's probably
Yeah,
not. You still have to wait, and the shorter the waiter time, the waiting times, the more annoyed we get by waiting. If you
yeah,
think about
yeah.
it,
I
right?
mean, if you have work with a real time workflow, then you like cannot imagine going back to like offline mode.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something. And I would like to know from you guys, if you are working in real time, what do you think about this? I would say new type of workflow because it's brand new if you think about it, right? But everything is new in our industry, if you think, right?
Especially now, yes.
Especially nowadays. Yeah, and things move so fast. And talking about nowadays, we will talk about AI, guys. I'm sorry. That's how it goes. We need to address the elephant in the room, but we do have some very nice features coming to V-Ray that include AI, right?
Yeah.
One of them is the AI mood match, which is quite interesting. Can you like explain briefly what it is and what people can do with it?
Yeah, so on the V-Ray side, we have this currently in V-Ray for Rhino and SketchUp, and we'll have it in other integrations later on. But what it does is help you set up the mode of your render. Basically, you give a reference image and you say, I want my scene. And usually it's an environment, so beautiful sunset or a bright blue sky. And you say, I want this look in my image. And then there's an algorithm that chooses the right environment, orients it in the right way, applies some kind of color correction so that you get a similar mode in your render as well. And in the next version, we've also made this work with the V-Ray Sun and Sky. So not only with HDR maps, but it should also be able to set up the V-Ray Sun and Sky system to get the same result. It's a really convenient way to, I kind of, because oftentimes you just want to have a certain mood in your image, to make it look better, but you don't necessarily have the time to cycle through HDR maps or figure out how the V-Ray sun should be in the scene. So you just want to say, this is what I want, and then the software figures it out.
Yeah, and that goes right to the direction that Tom Grimes mentioned on our last talk. That what can AI do for you that otherwise would be just laborious,
Yeah,
like and boring, and like
yeah,
because you're still curating the content. If
yeah,
you think like you're still choosing the right look, the right feel, or whatever, and okay, you know what, AI, do it for me. I'm not worried about doing it. That's not the
exactly.
joy of things
Yeah,
in the end.
it's a little bit like coding with AI or vibe coding. You say what you want, and it generates the code, and you can check the code if you want, and you can modify it if you want. But normally, the code is just an expression of an idea that you have and what you want to do, and the code is not the reason why you started doing things in the first place.
And that's not where the real value is, right?
Exactly.
If you're hiring a programmer, for example, you want the person who has the ideas, not the one that like really crashes on
Yeah.
writing code.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you have to know or had to know how to write code.
Yeah.
Still preferable. But having the idea of what to do is way more valuable.
Yeah, totally. And I think this AI mood match is a very good example of that. And speaking of that, we already have some questions or some comments here on the chat. Uh, One from Wesley. I personally loved it. We are working with really big scenes, and using Vantage in the viewport just helps us to do all the changes necessary and then export the scenes. Before, it was a back and forth process that was time consuming.
Yeah.
And again, like it's about doing things smarter,
Yeah.
not harder.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And the same logic applies to AI.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's AI or ray tracing in
Yeah.
the end, as long as it does the job. I usually tell people about before I started using V-Ray, I was like 5 years old. And people like, we used to place 100 Omni lights to
Yeah.
fake
Yep. Yep.
bounces. I
Yes.
don't miss those days
No.
at all.
And if you like if even now with 3D workflows, you have to learn a lot of stuff that is not necessarily very much relevant to what you want to get in the final result. There was a very interesting comment. Somebody on LinkedIn said, "I would be very happy if I never have to know what a UV map is in my life again." So, of course, UVs are just a way to get a certain result, but they're not like a goal. Nobody woke
Yeah.
up and said, "I want to do UVs."
Yeah. You don't wake up in the morning like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm going to be a
yeah,
UV professional. Like,
exactly. You do
it,
it because you have to, not because
yeah.
it's valuable.
And I have another comment here from Theo. Despite being a Corona fanboy, I do explore Vantage more and more recently. And I really dig it, despite the limitations of some of my favorite maps not being supported yet. And
Yeah.
there's the difference when you go from CPU based to GPU based, right? There's always some
That is
problems.
that's one thing. There's always a trade-off, but also like if you go back to how Vantage started originally, it was intended as a render for playing back V-Ray scenes, right? So Corona came afterwards. So it's normal that there's still a little bit of friction, but obviously we're trying to make this as seamless experience as possible.
Yeah. And again, I remember I was very impressed at Total Chaos with the first demos on the
Yeah.
big screen with the island, and
Yes.
they're
That was
zooming in and
yeah.
seeing the leaves. I was like, oh yeah, we're getting there, baby. We're definitely getting there. Now, still about Vantage. People love Vantage, I've said that Vantage is so cool. Another question I have, this is from Irakiu. I can't read the rest of the name because it's cut. I'm sorry. But another question I have is, after I adjust the settings for atmospheric effects or lighting in Chaos Vantage, will it be possible to automatically synchronize and transfer these settings to 3D Max, as it's the case with Light Mix and Frame Buffer?
We get this request a lot. So I would like to say at some point we would love to explore something like this, but also this is partially why we did the integration with the viewport, because you don't have extra settings in another application to worry about. So we'll I mean, it's a good question. definitely good, something to put on the wish list. So we'll see.
Yeah, and of course, there's always things that people come up with, the ideas people come
Yeah.
up with, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
We hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. No, this one specifically comes up every now and again, and but it's not very straightforward. So that's why it's not been implemented yet. So we were hoping with integrating Vantage in Max, it would kind of remove at least the necessity to do this kind of step. But obviously, if you do something more complicated in Vantage, it will be great to be able to transfer it back to Max.
Yeah, of course. Now, still in the AI subject, we also saw significant advancements in the AI enhancer, which is a very interesting tool, right? I think that it gives that extra sauce
Yep.
to whatever we do, like things that would take like hours now don't have to take hours, and people don't notice when you do them.
Yep.
Like if you
That was the goal.
like, I don't know, like you do some dust on the desk or something, people never notice.
Yep.
But it makes the image look even better. And now the AI enhancer supports 4K textures and features a large surface coverage mode. Creating complex, non-repeating or tiling materials has always been a time-consuming challenge. Yes, amen to that. It's has always been a pain, my least favorite part, really. And is the ultimate goal for Chaos to have artists free from time-consuming tasks such as texture creation, leaving the heavy lifting entirely to it could be AI or even the software, right? It doesn't matter if it's AI or not.
Doesn't have to be AI all the time. But yes, in my ideal world, working with 3D software would be very similar to how you work with something like an image generator. There, you type a text prompt to describe what you want, and then an image comes out. I would like to imagine that the same workflow is kind of possible in 3D. Again, you describe to the software what you want, and the software does it, but in 3D, not as a final baked image. The beautiful thing about 3D is that it's still editable, so you can go in your scene, you can move stuff around if you don't like it. It's very difficult to direct an AI to do exactly what you want. And I've been frustrated many times when I try to explain that, no, this spline should be on the left side of and they just don't get it. So that's why I believe 3D is valuable, but the way that people create 3D and interact with it, I think there's a lot of opportunity to make this process very, very simple.
Yeah, and 3D is the intentional part, right? Because like whatever you do, it's not in the nature of AI. If you think about it, it's always generating things from zero, basically.
Yes.
In a way, so like I do that all the time. My mother asks me to like fix pictures with AI because right, why not? And then my son used to say that, Dad, this is not you in the picture. It's like the actor that plays the role of you in the movie. Like it looks like you, but it's not you. And there's no control over it, really.
No.
It's in the nature of the whole process in the end.
Like touching up pictures, I don't really get. Like a picture is supposed to be a photo. The ones that I have on my phone, they're supposed to be a memory, right? I want to get to that exact moment in time, even if it wasn't perfect. So I don't understand that part. But anyway, that's
but you know what? What I did, I had the first picture of my son 20 years ago. My mother took it through a glass, so you could barely see us.
Okay.
So I used AI to remove the glare, and
that makes sense. Yes,
right. I was kind of restoring what was there.
I mean that makes sense. And yeah, to be fair, I also had a case where I made a selfie in a like there were all of these blue lights, so the image was very blue, and I wanted to make me look not like a blue skin
like
alien.
a Smurf or something.
Exactly. So and I did it with AI because it was the only thing that actually worked, to be honest. So maybe use cases like this. Yes.
Yes, it's all about use cases. I saw this. I think it was like a meme or something that companies are currently they want to use AI, and people are like, what for? We don't know yet. But and everyone's like that. Let's use AI. What for? I don't know, but we are using AI. Like it's just meaningless, senseless, I'd say. Now moving on to another question about native productivity features, and this one is interesting because now there's native support for parallax interiors. And I distinctively remember when those came out, like in the market, people were like, "Oh my god, that's salvation!" Because we do like apartment buildings and
Yeah.
office buildings,
Yeah.
and it was totally a pain. I had to model interiors so they would appear
Yeah.
on windows, and that's one of those features that come and people don't give much about it, but once they have it, they can't live without it.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it's been on the radar for a long time. Obviously, a very cool concept. Um, and there've been ways to do this, like OSL shaders, for a long time. But we wanted to have the same feature also in our real-time engines, Vantage, Envision, and also in Enscape. So, and they don't support shading languages. So we needed to have a native texture for this. And we actually first this for Vantage. The way that we did it would actually recognize the OSL code for a parallax interior shader, and it will create the respective texture in Vantage. And then we thought, well, if this works so well, can we not just have a native parallax texture in V-Ray? And
Which makes sense.
which makes sense. And that would also allow us to add some uh, suitable maps in the Cosmos library so that people have some starting point. So it seemed like a very normal thing to do. We, even though it's been on the roadmap for a long time, we only did it now because it felt like the right moment, and that's when we had it in Vantage. But it's something we've wanted to do for a long time.
And it's like if you're doing it right.
Yeah,
Because if you do something that is not like compatible with Vantage, for example, people be like,
yeah, it would
"Yeah, but
be
we can't use with Vantage."
exactly
So
that.
you're
So
crippling your own tools in a way if you do it like
yeah. I
that.
mean, that's the thing, right? If we don't have all these separate products anymore. If you do something, people would expect that it sort of works everywhere, which it
Yeah,
would in an ideal world, and try to get as close as possible. But
yeah,
yeah,
but it is kind of disappointing when you're using something and you expect that to work everywhere
yeah,
because no one told you it would not in the
exactly.
first place. But and again, this is a very useful tool. And this other question is about the quick caustics. And I remember, I think I mentioned that like the last time we spoke that when you introduced caustics in V-Ray, it was back in 2001 or something like that. And like there were tricks that we had to do, like you had to use a
Yep,
spotlight
yep,
and then you
yeah,
had to set the decay to inverse square with
yeah.
5 centimeters,
Things,
and
yes,
it was very
all that
tricky.
stuff.
It was
Yes,
very fast. I still have a video on my personal YouTube channel from 13 years ago showing how to do it, and it was very fast back then. But caustics as a thing has been very time consuming, very expensive, has
yeah.
always been very expensive.
It's a difficult effect to calculate in any case, no matter how you do it. Um, but the request for the quick caustics came from Konstantin, our product manager for VA for Annual SketchUp, and he said, "Oh, this is a problem that our customers regularly have, and the current solution that we have, it's not ideal. So, can you guys figure out a way to make this better?" So we thought about it, and I said, okay, I probably cannot do all types of caustics better, but specifically sunlight going through a water surface, maybe that's a simpler problem that we can actually make much easier and faster. And he said, okay,
And
let's see
how
what
did you
happens.
guys solve it on a technical part? Like, is it real caustics being calculated? Is it like an approximation?
It's an approximation, so it's not the real caustics, and the way that it's done is a little bit related to how the mesh is tessellated. So we take each triangle of the water surface, and then we figure out in which way the light will go from the
Hmm.
three vertices. And then we figure out how this, it's sort of a pyramidal shape, although not exactly a pyramid, but we can figure out how this shape propagates through space and how the light diverges or converges. And then you can, based on this, you can sort of approximate the caustic effect. It's it's not exactly fake, so there is some truth to it. So it's not completely.
Some truth is.
It's actually, if you compare it to the actual caustic, it's actually pretty close. Um, So it worked, but it took a while to get to, like, we were looking at ways that games do caustics, and most of them is just fake projection maps, which we thought like that would have been the fallback if nothing else worked, and we would have done a projection map. But we thought maybe there's a way to still do this in a more correct way.
But it's interesting. I mean, like most people will use caustics just for that in the end. Like they don't need very complicated, complex caustics in a
Yeah,
scene unless they're doing, I don't know, like a glass of water, like the ones we have with
yeah.
Veras and things very specific,
It might
right?
be important if you do jewelry, for example. It's kind of nice to see caustics reflected off some surface,
Hmm.
which is something that we could also do with this approach. We just didn't do it this time. But usually it's water, yes. In the vast majority of cases,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
all
water
the time.
surface.
And I again, like just like with the parallax shader, I can see people using this on a daily basis
Yeah,
because it's something actually useful
yeah,
for most people,
yeah,
right? And even if people who didn't know about caustics, they will start using it
yeah.
because it's easy, it's fast,
Yes,
it's cheap in a
yeah.
way.
I'm very. It's one of the topics that I personally worked on, so I'm super happy with the way that it turned out. There's still bits and pieces to finish, but and we'll do that. But still, it's turned out to be quite useful.
And it works.
Yeah.
And people can use it already. You can already use it on your at home, your studio or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. Now we have some questions here from the chat that I think are related to this
Hmm.
part, and I think that we might be able to answer to some of them. Let me find them because there's a lot of questions. To be honest, let me find it. Uh, okay, so regarding SketchUp or V-Ray for SketchUp, does Veras work with 3ds Max as it's now with SketchUp?
Yes.
Or and the other
There's
question was, if not, will it be in the
no
future?
Veras is already included with the latest release of DRA for 3ds Max, so and it works pretty much in the same way as it already does in SketchUp. So it's there.
Cool. Now, speaking of SketchUp, we have a question regarding the node material editor for SketchUp and Rhino, for
Yeah.
that matter. So, the arrival of the node material editor for SketchUp and Rhino users was one of the community's longest standing requests. I have to be honest, like, I I really can't see why people would like to overcomplicate something, but because it's more complicated, let's face it.
Yeah.
Like node work is much more complicated than
That's
the regular ones.
that's the reason why we were wondering about this so long. Like, not because it's a super complicated feature to do, but because we were wondering. Like most users who go to SketchUp exactly because it is easy and fast to use, and it's not 3ds Max, for example. So it was a weird request, but then it kept coming up every now and again. People would say, and the answer is yes. Maybe the majority of users for SketchUp don't have a need for a node editor, but there is a small subset of users that would love to use it, and they do more complicated things. Maybe they work in a larger company, they have some more specific requirements, and actually, we realized that it's not always about generating a photoreal picture. Sometimes people want very specific stylized effects just to show how a space looks like, or they
Hmm.
want to emphasize a certain aspect of a building. And in that case, having a way to do procedural shading or do a little bit more complicated shading networks is very valuable. So, and that's when you don't necessarily want everything to be perfectly photoreal. So that use case I can understand, and I'm happy that now people have the
So it's about giving control in the end, right?
exactly
It's not that
yes,
people are going to actively use it all the time, but having the
exactly,
ability
yeah,
to do
yeah, yeah.
something more complicated.
Sometimes it's the only way you can do a
Yeah,
specific task.
and I mean, I'm not that familiar with the SketchUp workflow, like because I'm not a SketchUp user, but I would assume that for certain tasks, people would rely on other softwares because that was
Yeah,
not what
yeah,
SketchUp was meant for. And not I'm
exactly.
not talking about V-Ray only, but SketchUp as a whole. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of plugins and
yeah,
other software that plug into SketchUp for that. So and it gets there's this meme on the internet, like there's a small viewport on SketchUp, and like 1,000 buttons with add-ons. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And pretty much like Blender as well. Like people have like thousands of add-ons on Blender.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of the same thing. Now, talking about integration, we have the integration of with Anima 6, along with features like the precise scatter brush and decal scattering, which was pretty cool. I didn't know about the decal scattering, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like when you're doing a
Yeah.
road or
Yep.
something, I had never thought of that really. It never occurred to me that like why not use the scattering tools to scatter decals on the street or something.
Well, we didn't. That's why it didn't work, right? And people said, "Well, it will actually be very, very useful." So, okay.
Yeah, yeah, and that shows that V-Ray is becoming a, again, and I quote the question that was sent to us, a comprehensive scene composition tool, not just a rendering engine.
That's my goal. I think, I mean, in terms of rendering, there's always stuff to improve, but I think we're already at the point where you can do most of the stuff you need. But then the bottleneck moves earlier when actually creating the 3D scene. And I think we can, obviously we've had a Cosmos library, we've had a Chaos Scatter, but I think we can do a lot more in that regard. Because there's a lot of just boring work to do when you create a 3D scene that we can help.
Now, I have a question. Like, is there anything that can't be done yet? Like, not because V-Ray doesn't have a feature or something, but is there anything that can't be done in 3D?
Well, there are things that, I mean, there are things that are more difficult than others. Like can't be done is a like relative thing. But one of the hardest problems that I've come against is recreating a scene from a reference photo. Like you're given a scene of a let's say a living room or a kitchen, and you have to recreate this in 3D. It turns out that this is a very, very hard problem for a machine to do. For a person, maybe not so much. You pick the right assets, you arrange them more or less the same way that you see on the picture, you can probably get it done. But for a machine to do that, even with all the AI tools that we have today, it turns out that it's not easy at all. So
And of course, the level of demand is different. Like, if you're doing it yourself, you'll be satisfied with close enough.
yeah,
But if a machine is doing it, you'll be like, it should be identical.
yeah. There's also
It's
that
very
part.
different the way we relate to machines in
Yes.
that sense. Now, there's another question here, and and this one was very funny because I was talking to Chris Nichols the
Mhm.
other day, and he mentioned that, you know what's the best feature on the new V-Ray? I was like, what? It's like we're able to relight Gaussian splats, and he
Yeah,
was very excited about it. And I was like, yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? And
yeah.
then how was it like? Now you can literally use Gaussian splats as part of your scene and relight things, and that opens like a kind of a Pandora's box if you think about it,
Yeah.
right?
It was actually a customer request. One of our customers came back to us. They were doing work with Gaussian splats. And I said, it will be really, really helpful for us if we can relight those splats or make them better integrated with the scene lighting. Um, and we said, okay, let's look into that and whether we can make this happen. So again, it wasn't easy. It took some time to research what can be done and to pick a solution that worked well in the majority of cases. But eventually we did it, and it brings us a step closer to having Gaussian splats be just a different representation of scene objects. It's not quite there yet because we can only add lighting to the splats. We cannot remove lighting,
Mm-hmm.
and it also works only as a diffuse lighting, so we don't really do like specular highlights and stuff on Gaussian splats. But at some point, I assume these are problems that are going to be solved as well. And the splats are interesting because they are a completely different way to represent geometry, and for one reason or another, easier to generate with machine learning algorithms and also from actual photographs. I don't know if you saw the announcement from the latest Apple.
It
Like
was
they have this big
yesterday or
announcement.
something.
They added Gaussian splats to Apple Maps. So that's super cool, and you can see like a whole city in a detail. Like you don't see all these polygons that are weirdly shaped.
Yeah.
Everything trees are trees, and everything looks really nice.
Yeah, but also again, it increases the level of expectations, right?
Yeah.
If you can see a tree and you find it to be detailed enough, you want to see like a squirrel on that tree in the end, and
Yeah.
they will get disappointed because there's
Yeah.
no squirrel there. There's just
No
a mess
squirrels
of
yet. Well,
splats,
yeah, yeah,
basically.
that's true. But
Now, can you use Gaussian splats for example, instead of modeling a chair, I can use a splat for a chair
you
in the
can. I
scene.
wouldn't. I mean, there are. I don't think splats are for everything. Some things are still much better represented as polygons. But splats are really useful for organic shapes or anything that you capture from the real world because you can represent things like thin hairs and fuzz and all that stuff that will be really difficult to do in 3D, and it just happens naturally with Gaussian splats. But I wouldn't turn everything into splats
Yeah.
just yet. So chairs, tables, there's no real, and they're also slower to render. Let's not forget that. So sometimes it's just more efficient to stick to traditional
Which is the
ways of
same
doing
with
things.
with Vantage that you were saying earlier. Like sometimes
Yeah,
it's just too expensive to do it in a
yeah,
way
yeah.
rather than the other one. So it's like it kind of makes sense. And I was wondering if like, do you think that we might end up rendering our scenes as Gaussian splats already, so
Yes,
we can send it to a client and they can,
that's exactly what people are doing anyway. Even today, we have customers that are just manually, not manually, but maybe scripting it, but placing cameras around the scene to render different views of the scene and then recreate using those to create a splat that they can send to a customer and they can do a walkthrough. It is a completely new way of delivering final result, not just as images and not as animation, but just an interactive experience. And the nice thing is that in that case, you don't need a super powerful machine to render the splats. You don't need a complicated real-time engine. It's just a very convenient way to transport.
yeah, just your browser
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. So it's definitely a very valid use case. I would love to be able to get to a point where we can render splats out of V-Ray. It's a research topic right now for us. So hopefully we can make this, hopefully one button,
Yeah, it
but
would be
bake
nice.
this to splat when it happens.
Yeah, and Meta has their Gaussian splat generator
Yeah.
on the Quest 3. I've used it. I did a Gaussian splat of my home,
Mhm.
and it's pretty uncanny.
Yeah.
Like the results, like what I did was like I did my living room, right,
Mhm.
and it was during the day when
Yeah.
I captured it, and I did an extensive capture. I was like crouching
Yeah.
behind the sofa and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and then I tried it in the living room at night, and it was like disorientating because it felt like I was there, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
actually was, but it was day, and like
Yes.
my
Okay.
brain went like, huh?
Okay.
What's going on here? So,
Yeah, that's, I can see that.
yeah,
Weird experience.
yeah, yeah. So it's very weird, but it's also an awesome technology.
Yeah.
If you think like it makes like actual representations, 3D representations, very accessible to everyone on a phone or whatever. And you mentioned Apple; they now allow you to create Gaussian splats using our iPhone as well. I think.
Yeah. They had this, it was interesting. They had a paper a few months back where they can create Gaussian splats just from a single photo. And then you can do a little bit of parallax, like you can move the viewpoint a little bit. So that was also done with Gaussian splats.
Which is also very interesting. Now, the last question we have from the batch that we have already in our hands is looking at AI, real time viewport rendering, cloud tools like Chaos Cloud Reviews, for example, which are pretty cool actually, and 3D scanning. The Chaos ecosystem has evolved drastically. And that's true. I didn't realize that. I was reading an article from a reseller, MTech, I think,
Mhm.
and they're like, you know what? There's been a lot of changes to the workflows and everything. I was reading like, dude, really, it changed a lot.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff going on,
Yeah.
and sometimes we don't realize that. And if we could look, and this is my favorite one. If you could look forward to V-Ray 10 which will be like in 10 years or so, something like that.
It's more like,
What's the major technological disruption you would like to lead in the visualization industry? That's a deep question and very nice one.
so to me, I would like to think we'll get to a point where, and I mentioned this before, it's not about rendering specifically, but where you can create a whole scene or a whole world with just in a completely different way, whether it's going to be text prompts or whether it's going to be you might even be like talking to your computer. I don't know, but it will be a much more intuitive way of creating 3D content, not necessarily clicking with your mouse and dragging things around, but basically just describing to the machine what you want as a final result, and it will figure out a way to do it for you. And I think that will be a very powerful, because if you see where things are going, it's all the same direction. Like I was trying to do something with Google Sheets some days ago, and I just didn't know what's the right way to do it in Google Sheets. So, but they now have this Gemini prompt there. So
Yeah.
I just said, well, just sort this table by this column and do it in this way, and it just did it. So I didn't even need to know which menu to go to or what command to type. It just did it for me. So um, that's kind of the way to interface with 3D programs in the future. I think you would just either show an image and say, "This is what I want." You will describe, or you will describe what you want, and you might also model it yourself if you want. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that, but the software will be able to understand a lot of your, like, where you want to go, and it will do it for you.
One thing that strikes me whenever we talk about the future like that, like I'll be able to talk to my software and it will do whatever I want and stuff like that, is that we kind of forget that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So the software can do that. So I just read that OpenAI and Anthropic, they are at a loss right now because they actually pay for, for people to use their technology because
Yeah.
like you're paying like $100 in a subscription, but you're actually spending $200 in
Yep.
resources and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Do you think that's sustainable in the long run? When V-Ray 10 comes out, do you think
Well, I'm
it
hoping
will be?
that when Vray 10 comes out, this will be a solved problem, maybe. But there are two things here. Yes, first, it is very expensive today, but it's not probably going to be very expensive forever. I assume there are already people, whether it's at OpenAI or Google or Meta or NVIDIA even, they're thinking, how can we make this cheaper and faster? At some point, they will figure it out. Um, but at the moment, you're right, there is the cost factor, and where this is going to end up, I don't know. Maybe we'll get to a point where doing something with AI is just as expensive as having a person do it. And then, yeah, okay, so which one?
And
Um,
then people start doing it again because it's the same price.
I don't know. I mean, if you look at the latest, like Anthropic released a new model yesterday, Fable 5. It's
Mhm.
the latest model, and it's a lot more expensive than the previous model. So and it's only available for a short time to subscription customers. After that, they will only have it in the um, pay-as-you-go tier. But you can really like make like thousands of dollars in expenses just for doing something in a matter of a few days. And then it's a valid question: would it not have been better to just have a person do it? So I don't know.
That's a question to you guys, really. Like
It's a question. Yeah.
sometimes we are just so excited about a technology that we forget that it has costs. And I'm not talking only about money, but about everything involved.
Yeah.
It does have costs. And speaking of like the future, like I've always imagined that the future would be like Iron Man, like when he on, I think Iron Man 2, when he's trying to figure out the new arc reactor or something, is like, I don't like this, create this, give me something like very interactive. And it didn't feel like he has a tool. It feels like he's creating something. And sometimes I feel like we're missing that part. We're just concerned about the tool and we're not creating stuff because we're concerned about like it's AI, so I'm going to use Cloud, I'm going to use Base 44 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the tool is important, but I guess at some point, um, usually the way it happens, you will end up with a few vendors of solutions, like high-end AI solutions. It probably wouldn't matter much which exactly solution you use, and they keep leapfrogging each other, right? So Anthropic has the best model today. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow Google will come up with another
Or
one,
some Chinese company that we've
or
never
or
heard
or
of
that
here
or
around
that
here
yes.
will have the
But there's
bigger one.
also another tendency that's gonna probably um, be going on for a while, like local computation. At some point, you will, or you might not want to use a cloud system to do what you want. You might want to run a local model locally, whether it's for cost reasons or security reasons, whatever. And that's also going to be more and more popular. It's something that we are exploring at Chaos right now. Maybe you don't always need to use the latest model, and maybe one of the open source models will do it just fine. Maybe a little bit dumber, maybe a little bit slower, but
Yeah,
works.
yeah, sure. But then you'll be like, you're the one responsible for the infrastructure again,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
And that's a big part of it. Like, it's so
Yes.
much easier just to open your browser and say, okay, you know what? I need an image for this.
Sure. Sure. And eventually somebody has to pay for it. So.
Someone has to pay for it, definitely. Now we have some very specific questions on the chat. That's why I left them for the final part here, because they're very, like, I want to say random, but they're like about different subjects. One from Francesco about V-Ray for SketchUp. Are there any plans to add the option to exclude specific objects from individual lights, similar to light linking in other 3D softwares like 3ds Max, for example? We've done that since forever. This would be very useful for more controlled and precise lighting setups.
I mean, Virik obviously can do this, and I would like to say that yes, it will be possible. But again, how complicated do we want to make Virik for SketchUp specifically? But it's a good question, so we can discuss it with the product team and see if there's interest.
And that changes the workflow in a way, right?
Yeah,
It gives you more
yeah,
possibilities
yeah.
of
It
working on
doesn't help
things.
though. There is this perception out there that Vir is very complicated to learn and very people don't want to do this because like I don't want complex stuff. We're not helping the case, right? So
But then people don't want complicated stuff, but they want to do complicated stuff,
yeah,
which is
so that's
kind
that's
of,
that's where I think AI can maybe help a little bit because it can hide all that complexity and say just tell me what you want and I'll do it for you. You don't care if like there are 100 settings underneath.
yeah, totally. So maybe we are moving towards a more hybrid approach to rendering in a way.
Yeah,
Like, for example, right now you can't add, as you said, spectral highlights to Gaussian splats.
yeah,
Maybe you can do that with AI in post, for example.
yeah,
Like, there could be a way of doing
yes,
that. It's just a matter of how you approach that.
yeah.
Still talking about V-Ray for SketchUp, we have a question from Frank. Will we be able to create a V-Ray camera inside SketchUp, same as Rhino creates a physical V-Ray camera that can be moved? I think that's the question there is.
That one I don't know. That I think that one is more a SketchUp limitation than and I don't know to what extent we can mess up with a camera system in SketchUp. So um again, not sure if that's actually possible.
Yeah, we have to remember you're always confined to the host application.
Yeah.
Like,
So
if you can't do, you can't do,
yeah.
even if you want to.
So
And that's fine, right? That's why you have different applications out there. Like,
yeah.
no application has the obligation of doing everything,
Yeah.
basically. Here's an interesting question regarding Veras. I wish Bill was here to answer the Veras question as well.
Yes.
Uh, can you get a 3D model from Veras like Meshy? I believe we can't, but Veras is very interesting in a way. Like, you can select like a light appliance,
Yeah.
then you can have it changing that appliance specifically.
Yeah. That's actually one of the topics we are researching right now, exactly that. Transferring something from the image back into the 3D scene as a 3D model. Different ways to do it. Hopefully one of them will work out. but we do have guys working on this right now.
Yeah, that would be very useful. I never thought of that, and that would be very useful, especially for simpler models. Like, you don't have to do some World of Warcraft level of
Yeah, absolutely.
3D
Yes.
models
Yes.
with AI. Another question from Frank: can you add map location geo 3D geometry similar to what other renderers does, like using Escape or V-Ray. It depends on the host application, I would say, right?
So
You
with
can do that in Max since Max 2, I think.
so we've had a lot of requests for adding site context from Google Maps, and Enscape has had the site context feature for a while, but it's using another solution. So it's a topic that we definitely want to get to, and we've been doing various proof of concepts around that. So I can't promise anything right now. I can just say that we've done some research, and it's an interesting topic for us. So hopefully something useful will happen.
Cool. Now from Andras. As a Cinema 4D user, I'd like to know about the future of V-Ray in C4D. We've got that question the last time, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah. For us, same answer as before. C4D is kind of one of the smaller integrations. It's not very. It already has a very good renderer in Redshift, so it's a little bit hard for us to find users for that. But there is a dedicated user base to be sure, and there are people who like Vray for Cinema 4D, but it's unfortunately a very small amount of people, so the development goes really. We can't afford to spend too much effort on that, unfortunately. So
Yeah, and that's not only with Cinema 4D. I mean, like we've seen softwares that ended up not being that popular or not
yeah,
being that
it's,
needed in various
yeah, it's
areas, and people
unfortunate,
like,
but it happens.
yeah.
And um,
Now we have a set of 3 questions here
yeah,
that I was saving for last because they look very complicated. I couldn't read them right away because it was quite long. But that's from Patrick. Hi, I'm currently beginning to design a fully headless database-driven packshot rendering pipeline. I told you it was going to be complicated. The system dynamically assembles USD and Material X assets, studios, and cameras. I'm looking at using Chaos Cloud as our primary render backend, and I have a few technical questions.
mhm.
Let's again. First, are there plans for Chaos Cloud to support direct USD upload and parsing in the near future? Or will generating a minimal VR scene wrapper remain the standard workflow for the foreseeable future?
So for the moment, doing a wrapper VRA scene that just imports the USD file is going to be the way. Um, Whether we will support USD natively on the cloud, I would love to say yes, but the USD standard is also evolving very rapidly, both USD and Material X. So for us, it will be a bit of a challenge to support all the latest updates. Um, and for the moment, it's probably not something that we will do. So yeah, the VRA scene sort of hack will be the way to go.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest solution is the best, right? Like because we were having this live conversation about Blender like a couple of weeks ago, and it's like Blender develops so fast that sometimes you have to stick with one version
Yeah,
and just do your thing. Wait like a few months until you can
yeah,
catch up with, because it's not like we're not only one team working in tandem with about
yeah.
the same tool, right? Another question here: how close is Chaos Cloud to 100% Material X feature parity right now when materials are evaluated directly from a USD container? Are there any specific Material X nodes we should avoid for cloud rendering or best practice?
Anything that works locally with VRA standalone with Material X will work on the cloud as well. So that there is, I think we support the majority of Material X nodes right now. Um, However, there's a new version of Material X that just got released a few days ago, and it has a bunch of new features like car paint flakes and other stuff, and we don't support that yet. Although we'll get there at some point. But the best way to figure out if something is supported on the cloud is to just render it locally with a standalone, and then you'll get the exact same result on the cloud.
I'd say it's time proof. It's a better solution at this point. And the last question of the bunch is, if our pipeline relies on a custom AR resolver in the backend to handle USD asset paths, how reliably does the Chaos Cloud CLI resolve and package those relative references prior to upload?
Not very well. That's all I can say. It's asset management in USD is complicated, and the USD standard doesn't help a whole lot with that. So we have no way to, like, I don't know if we will be able to use that custom asset resolver. So I think the best way is to, like, just make sure everything has absolute pass, which is obviously not ideal, but I don't have any better solution at the moment.
That's unfortunate, but it happens, right? The last two questions that we have here, because we only have time for two more questions. V-Ray distance texture is not working in Vantage. Is that so?
Yeah, it's I don't think we did it yet, so I assume it's somewhere on the roadmap, but it's not done yet.
But it's obviously one of those tricky things because it's generated on the fly, right?
Yes, so you have to do, and it's like not exactly like a mini ray tracer, but almost like a mini ray tracer just for that one single texture. And it's on a GPU, it's complicated. We did it for V-Ray GPU, so we know how it's done. It's just we are very careful with what we add to Vantage because we don't want to slow. GPU code is a little bit weird because you add one feature and then everything slows down whether you use that feature or not. So we want to be very careful with what we add to the Vantage code.
But the problem has been solved already. It's just a matter of how to adapt things,
Yeah,
for them
yeah,
to,
yeah.
like, it's worth implementing,
Sure. Yes.
right? Last question from Amit. Can Gaussian splat capture caustics from water? And if it does, then can it be relit with the new V-Ray version, or can we change some color properties of the splat?
That one, I mean, I don't see why. Like, if you take just photographs um, under the water, you might be able to reproduce the caustics, although if they're moving, I don't know how that's going to work. And Gaussian splats can represent a surface that has caustics projected on it. That's not a problem. But it'll be just baked into the color of the splats, so it will not be something that we can change in V-Ray afterwards. But if you have like a pool that is done with Gaussian splats, and then you have water surface on top of it, like a regular mesh, then we will be able to do the caustics for sure.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to generate caustics from that. Like, if there's
Correct.
already water there, you probably have to, like,
remove the water and then
remove the water and have a plane or something.
Yeah, and then we can make it work.
Which makes sense. And finally, Olivier Bessier asks, point cloud in Vantage?
Point clouds, why not? We already have the Gaussian splats, so it's not that different, I guess. So,
Oh, there you go. Guys, we've reached the end of our time with Vlado here. I'd like to thank you guys so much for being here with us. We have over 70 people from the beginning of the stream until now, which is so cool. We really appreciate you being here with us. Vlado, I really appreciate you being here
thank you.
with us just after this hot afternoon in Sofia. It's very hot, guys. You have no idea. It's really hot. And don't forget to go to CGconnect.chaos.com. We have, I'm sending the link again. We have a V-Ray deep dive coming up on the 24th. Make sure to register, and we have plenty more events coming up. And if you have ideas for other events, if you want to see Vlado again, I'm offering you already to the crowd. If you want to see, to the wolves, right? If you want to see Vlado or anyone really, just let us know in the comments, and we'll gladly oblige. So thank you so much. See you next time.